The promised Lieutenant Marcus Thorne adjusted his maintenance toolkit as the diplomatic shuttle, Meridian's Grace, descended through Yelithra's emerald atmosphere. 15 years had passed since he'd last seen this jungle world, but the humid air still carried that familiar scent of violet blooms and ozone storms. Back then, he'd been 12, just a diplomat's son following his father, Ambassador Thorne, through endless negotiations. The Elithrans had been a curiosity to young Marcus. Tall, graceful beings with opalescent skin that shifted colors with their emotions, and those striking amber eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom. Especially Cathara. She'd been the daughter of High Counselor Velfine, assigned as his cultural guide during their 6-month stay. While the adults discussed trade agreements, Marcus and Cathara had explored crystal caves, raced through bioluminescent forests, and shared stories under twin moons. She'd been fascinated by human customs, particularly their marriage rituals. Humans bond for life with mere words? She'd asked one evening as they watched meteor showers paint the sky. Pretty much, 12-year-old Marcus had laughed. My mom says it's about promising to stay together, no matter what. During their final week, a fierce storm had trapped them in an ancient shrine. Lightning illuminated the carved walls as rain drummed overhead. That's when Marcus, trying to comfort a homesick Cathara, had made his fateful joke. Hey, if we're still friends when we grow up, maybe I'll marry you, and you could visit Earth any time. Cathara had gone perfectly still, her skin shifting to deep silver and emotion Marcus didn't recognize. She'd drawn a ceremonial blade from her sash and pressed it to her palm until golden blood welled up. Then by blood and starlight, it is sealed, she'd whispered, pressing her bleeding hand to his. Vivek Moran is spoken. Marcus had laughed nervously, not understanding the gravity in her voice. Sure, it's a deal. Now, stepping onto the landing platform of Valthara Station, Marcus spotted a figure in ceremonial white waiting near the diplomatic pavilion. His blood ran cold as recognition hit him like a plasma bolt. Cathara stood there, no longer the playful girl he remembered. She'd grown into a stunning woman, her opalescent skin gleaming silver blue in the afternoon light, elaborate braids adorned with living crystals that pulsed with soft energy. Her amber eyes found his across the platform, and her expression remained unreadable. In her hands, she held something that made Marcus's stomach drop, a tablet of living crystal, its surface crawling with Elithran script that seemed to write itself in flowing, organic patterns. Marcus Thorne, she called out, her voice carrying easily across the platform. I have come to claim what was promised under the sacred moons of Yelithra. Vivek Moran awaits fulfillment. Every Yelithran on the platform had gone silent, their skin shifting to respectful pale gold as they witnessed what was clearly a momentous occasion. Marcus realized he was in serious trouble. The contract captain Reynolds, the diplomatic mission leader, stepped between Marcus and Cathara, his expression professionally neutral, despite the obvious tension crackling in the air. High Daughter Cathara, Reynolds said, offering a formal bow. Perhaps we could discuss this matter in private? My technician may not fully understand. There is nothing to discuss. Cathara interrupted, her skin flashing brief copper irritation. Marcus remembered. Vivek Moran was sealed in blood before witnesses of wind and storm. Your Marcus Thorne spoke the binding words freely. She held up the crystal tablet, and Marcus could see his own name etched in flowing Lithran script alongside hers, surrounded by complex ceremonial markings that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. High Daughter, Marcus managed, his voice cracking slightly. I was 12. I didn't know. Ignorance does not void sacred oaths, Cathara replied, but something flickered in her amber eyes. Pain, perhaps? Among my people, Vivek Moran is the most binding of contracts. It supersedes all other obligations, all other loyalties. You promised yourself to me before the sacred storms, with blood seal to witness. Reynolds activated his communit. I'm calling Ambassador Thorne immediately. This requires diplomatic intervention. No, Cathara said firmly. This is not a matter for your diplomats. This is Cavithanel heart law. It transcends your human politics. Marcus stared at the crystal contract, memories flooding back. The storm, the shrine, Cathara's strange silver pallor when he'd made his casual promise. How had he been so blind to what was happening? What happens if I can't honor this? He asked quietly. Cathara's skin went slate gray, the color of morning, Marcus realized with growing dread. Then the shame falls upon House Valthane. My father's bloodline would be dishonored before the 12 clans. Our petition to join. Your Galactic Assembly would be withdrawn. The trade agreements your father negotiated would become void. That's ridiculous. Marcus burst out. One childhood promise can't. Can't what? Cathara stepped closer, and now Marcus could see the slight tremor in her hands, the way her breathing had quickened. Can't determine the fate of entire civilizations? Can't bind two hearts across the stars? Your own human legends speak of words having power, Marcus Thorne. Why do you think ours would be different? Captain Reynolds was speaking rapidly into his come, trying to reach the ambassador, but Marcus barely heard him. Something in Catharai's expression, the way her eyes kept darting to the shadows around the platform, the subtle tension in her shoulders triggered his old memories. This was how she'd looked when they were kids, and she was hiding something. When she'd been scared, but trying to be brave. Cathara, he said softly, using her childhood name instead of her formal title. What aren't you telling me? For just a moment, her composure cracked. Her skin flickered through rapid color changes, fear white, anxiety yellow, desperation red, before settling back to formal silver. The contract must be acknowledged within 3 days, she said, not answering his question, or the consequences will be ... severe. Before Marcus could press further, a new voice cut through the air cold, commanding and speaking in rapid Yelitharan. 3 figures in dark ceremonial robes had appeared at the platform's edge, their skin an ominous deep purple. Cathara's reaction was immediate and telling. She stepped protectively in front of Marcus, her hand moving instinctively to the ceremonial. Blade at her side. House Mordock, she whispered, and Marcus heard genuine fear in her voice for the first time. The rival house, the 3 Litherans in dark robes approached with predatory grace, their skin maintaining that ominous purple hue that Marcus now recognized as barely controlled hostility. The leader, a tall figure with intricate scarification, covering his arms, spoke in accented standard. High Daughter Cathara of House Valthane, he said, his voice carrying mock courtesy. How unexpected to find you here, conducting Cavithanal with an outsider. Lord Sephron of House Mordock, Cathara replied, her own voice steady despite the fear Marcus had glimpsed moments before. The sacred contracts of my house are not subject to your scrutiny. Zephron's scarred lips curved in what might have been a smile. Ah, but they are when they affect the coming vote in the Council of 12. Your father's ambitious plans for joining the human assembly have made many of us uncomfortable. Marcus felt Captain Reynolds tense beside him, clearly, recognizing the political undercurrents swirling around them. But Marcus was focused on Cathara, watching her skin shift through subtle color variations, calculation green, determination gold, and underneath it all, that persistent fear white. The vote has nothing to do with my personal obligations, Cathara said, doesn't it? Zephron stepped closer, and his companions flanked him menacingly. A marriage bond with a human would certainly influence your father's standing, especially if that human were to prove unsuitable. The threat in his words was unmistakable, and Marcus suddenly understood why Cathara had seemed so tense. This wasn't just about an old promise. This was about assassination. You dare threaten sacred Vecmoran? Cathara's skin flashed bright, copper-pure fury. The old laws protect. The old laws, Zephron interrupted, also speak of what? Happens when oaths are broken, when honor is compromised, when houses fall from grace. His purple skin deepened to near black. Your human boy was a child when he made his pretty words. Children cannot seal true contracts. House Mordak formally challenges the validity of this Vecmoran. Marcus watched Cathara go completely still, her skin cycling rapidly through colors. He couldn't interpret. Then, with dawning horror, he realized what was happening. You're using me, he said quietly. Both of you. This isn't about marriage, it's about politics. Cathara's head snapped toward him, amber eyes wide with something that might have been panic. Marcus, no, yes, Zephron said with satisfaction. The human sees clearly. Your father needs this alliance to strengthen his position for the Kensev. Assembly vote, but a challenged contract, a disputed oath. He gestured dismissively. Such instability would surely disqualify House Velthane from representing our people to the galaxy. That's enough. Captain Reynolds stepped forward, his hand moving toward his sidearm. This is a diplomatic station under Galactic Assembly. Protection. I won't tolerate threats against my personnel. Zephron's laugh was like breaking glass. Threats, Captain? We merely discuss the ancient laws of our people. Though I wonder. His eyes fixed on Marcus with predatory interest. What happens when your technician realizes he's been manipulated? When he understands that his childhood friend has returned not from love, but from desperation? Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. Because despite everything, despite the politics and the manipulation, he'd felt a flicker of the old connection when he'd seen Cathara waiting on the platform. The same girl who'd shown him secret waterfalls and taught him to read the wind patterns. 3 days, Zephron continued. That's how long you have to prove this contract's validity. 3 days before House Mordak presents evidence to the Council that will destroy both this sham, marriage, and House Velthane's credibility forever. As the 3 dark-robed figures glided away, Marcus turned to Cathara, whose skin had gone. Pale silver exhaustion, he remembered. Tell me the truth, he said. All of it. The truth unveiled in the privacy of Cathara's quarters aboard the station. Marcus watched her remove the ceremonial crystals from her hair with shaking hands. Away from the political theater, she looked younger, more fragile, more like the girl he'd known. My father didn't send me, she said quietly, not looking at him. I came against his orders. Marcus leaned against the curved wall, trying to process everything that had happened. Why? Because House Mordak discovered the Vecmoran contract. In the ceremonial archives 2 months ago, she set down the last crystal and finally met his eyes. They've been planning to use it to destroy my family's influence ever since. I don't understand. How does our childhood promise give them power? Over anything? Cathara's skin shifted to teaching blue, the same color she'd worn when explaining Elithran customs years ago. Among my people, the Vecmoran is sacred, but it must be honored perfectly. If the bond is challenged and found wanting, if either party breaks faith or proves unworthy, the shame doesn't just fall on the individuals. It taints their entire bloodline. And your father's pushing for Lithra to join the Galactic Assembly, Marcus said, understanding dawning. Mordic once. Him disgraced, more than disgraced, destroyed. Her voice grew bitter. They have evidence that the contract exists, that it was sealed properly according to ancient law. But they also know you were a child, that you didn't understand what you were doing. They plan to challenge it publicly, force you to renounce it, and use your rejection to prove that House Velthane cannot even maintain the honor of their own oaths. Marcus pushed off from the wall. So you came here to what? Convince me to go through with a fake marriage? No. The word burst out of her with desperate intensity, her skin flashing through rapid color changes. I came to warn you. To tell you to stay away from Elithra, to refuse the contract cleanly, so the shame would fall only on me, not on both our peoples. But something changed, Marcus guessed, watching her carefully. Cathara was quiet for a long moment, her skin settling into soft gold, the color of truth-telling. When I saw you on the platform, I remembered why I sealed the contract in the first place. We were children. I wasn't. She stood and moved to the viewport, looking out at Lithra's green curve against the stars. Not entirely. Among my people, we mature earlier in matters of the heart. When you made your promise that night in the storm shrine, I had been hoping for weeks that you would. Marcus felt his chest tighten. Cathara ... I knew you were leaving soon. I knew it. Might be years before I saw you again, if ever. But you were the first person who looked at me and saw just, not the High Counselor's daughter, not a political alliance, not a stepping stone to power. Just Cathara, who liked to climb crystal trees and race river currents. She turned back to him, and Marcus was stunned to see actual tears, streaming down her face, leaving silver trails on her opalescent skin. So when you joked about marriage, I made it real. I sealed it in blood and storm witness because I wanted something of you I could keep forever, even if you forgot about me completely. I never forgot, Marcus said softly. I thought about you. Wondered what happened to the girl who taught me to read the wind. She grew up, Cathara said with a sad smile. She learned politics and diplomacy and the weight of family honor. She learned that childhood dreams are luxuries that noble daughters cannot afford. Marcus stepped closer to her. What if they're not? What if we could make this real? Her skin went shock white. Marcus, you don't understand the implications. Then explain them to me. All of them. Because I'm starting to think that 15 years ago, 2 kids might have been smarter than all the adults around them. For the first time since he'd seen her on the platform, Cathara's expression held genuine hope. The choice, the council chamber of Velthara Station, hummed with tension as representatives from 12 Lithran houses gathered for the formal challenge. Marcus stood beside Cathara, at the center of the crystalline amphitheater, both of them wearing traditional ceremonial white, while Lord Zephyron and his allies arranged themselves in a hostile semicircle. High Counselor Velthane Cathara's father sat in the highest tier, his skin a carefully neutral silver, though Marcus caught glimpses of worry yellow flickering beneath. Captain Reynolds and Ambassador Thorne flanked the human delegation, both looking grim. The challenge is simple, Zephyron announced, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. House Mordok contends that this Thekmoran is invalid. The human was a child, incapable of understanding our sacred laws. He made his words in jest, not commitment. And now, faced with the true weight of Elithran marriage bonds, he will renounce the contract, proving that House Velthane's judgment is fatally flawed. The assembled counselors murmured among themselves, their skin shifting through various shades of interest and concern. Marcus felt the weight of their attention, the centuries of tradition and political maneuvering that hung in the balance. Marcus Thorne, Zephyron continued, do you accept the sacred obligations of Thekmoran? Will you bind yourself to Cathare of House Velthane for all your days, accepting Elithran law as your own, submitting to our customs and traditions? Or will you admit that your childhood words were meaningless, that this contract is a sham? The chamber fell silent. This was the moment Zephyron had orchestrated, the trap designed to destroy both the marriage contract and House Velthane's credibility. Either Marcus would flee, proving the contract worthless, or he'd be forced into a binding alien marriage, he couldn't possibly understand. Marcus looked at Cathara, seeing the fear she was trying to hide, the way her hands trembled slightly as she held the crystal contract. Then he thought about their conversation the night before, the truths they'd finally shared, the connection. That had somehow survived 15 years and countless obstacles. "Lord Zephyron," Marcus said, his voice steady, "you're absolutely right about one thing. I was a child when I made that promise. I didn't understand Elithran law or the weight of your traditions." He heard Kethera's sharp intake of breath, saw Zephron's triumphant smile begin to form. "But," Marcus continued, "I understood something more important. I understood that I was making a promise to my best friend, someone who showed me wonders I'd never imagined, who trusted me with her secrets, who made me feel less alone on a world far from home." He turned to face Kethara fully, reaching out to take her hands in his. Her skin flickered through rapid color changes: hope, fear, love, desperation. 15 years later, I still understand that. The girl I made that promised to grow into an incredible woman. Someone brave enough to risk everything to protect both our peoples from political manipulation. Someone who came here not to trap me, but to set me free. He squeezed her hands gently. "The promise I made as a child was real, Lord Zephyron. But the choice I'm making now, as an adult who understands exactly what he's committing to, that's even more real." Marcus raised his voice, addressing the entire chamber. "I, Marcus Thorn of Earth, accept the sacred Thekmoran with Kethara of House Velthun. Not because I have to, not because of politics or manipulation, but because 15 years ago, 2 lonely kids found something worth keeping forever." The chamber erupted. Some counselors flashed approval gold, others concern red. Zephron's skin had gone almost black with rage, while High Counselor Velthane looked stunned. But Marcus only had eyes for Kethera, whose skin had gone brilliant white pure joy. He remembered as tears streamed down her face. "The contract is sealed," she whispered, holding up the crystal tablet, which now pulsed with warm light. "Witnessed by the 12 houses under sacred law." "This changes nothing," Zephyron snarled. "A human cannot understand our ways." "Then perhaps," interrupted a new voice, "it's time our ways evolved." High Counselor Velthane had risen from his seat, his skin shifting to authority gold. "The Galactic Assembly has much to teach us about unity across differences. My daughter and Marcus Thorn have just demonstrated that the greatest bonds are those chosen freely, with full knowledge and open hearts." As the political implications settled over the chamber, Marcus found himself smiling. Somewhere in the stars, a 12-year-old boy and girl were probably laughing with vindication. Sometimes the best promises were the ones that grew up alongside the people who made them.